Hello, I am Othman Sbai. I'll be presenting our work on the impact of base dataset design on few-shot image classification. While most works focus on designing new algorithms to improve performance on a standard dataset, we focus on understanding better how training data impacts performances. For example, for a fixed budget of annotated images, is it better to have more classes with few examples or less classes with more examples per class? And is it better to annotate classes with low or high diversity in the visual appearance of images? To answer these questions, we consider the framework of few-shot classification. In few-shot classification, the model is typically first trained on a base dataset with many annotated images, then applied to a test set containing images from different classes and very few images per class. We consider this setup with different base datasets and fixed test benchmarks using multiple methods, architectures, and benchmarks. In this presentation, we focus on results obtained with cosine classifier method using a wide ResNet backbone on mini ImageNet benchmark. Experiments on other benchmarks with other architectures and methods can be found in the paper. In order to compare this and sample multiple base datasets, we construct a large dataset of 6,000 classes and more than 7 million images containing the largest classes from ImageNet 22K. We carefully remove any class similar to the test classes in each benchmark considered. Our experimental protocol consists of first selecting the base dataset by sampling classes and images, then training a feature extractor while L2 normalizing features and classifier weights, and finally evaluating the performance of this feature extractor in few-shot classification by associating each test image to the novel class for which its average cosine similarity with the examples from this novel class is the highest. I will now show examples of results that we discuss in the paper, including base dataset size and its similarity to test classes, trade-off between the number of classes and images per class for a fixed dataset size, the impact of class redefinition by splitting or grouping, the influence of class diversity and difficulty on the few-shot performance. In this graph, we show the evolution of few-shot performance when sampling datasets with different numbers of classes. The x-axis shows the number of sampled classes, the y-axis the performance. We sample datasets either randomly or either closest or farthest to test classes by considering different features. The black dotted line shows performances by sampling these classes randomly. The dashed lines correspond to sampling classes furthest from the test set, and the solid lines to classes closest to the test set. Colors represent different ways of selecting closest or furthest classes. In red, Oracle features obtained by training classifier on the whole ImageNet 6K dataset. In blue, MoCo features learned in a self-supervised manner, or in yellow, the WordNet hierarchy for computing distances between classes. We can see that training on more data boosts the performance by a very large gap, and that using similar classes is better than having many farthest ones. Furthermore, this similarity can be evaluated using self-supervised features. While the findings that closest classes give better performance than farthest classes are not surprising, we emphasize that the amplitude of performance gap is very important. We now consider the trade-off between the number of classes and the number of images per class. In other terms, what is the optimal number of classes for a given number of annotated images? For that, we randomly sample multiple datasets of same total number of images with increasing number of classes in the x-axis, and observe the 5-shot 5-way accuracy in the y-axis obtained over multiple runs. We find that there is a trade-off between the number of classes and the number of images per class. The optimum tends to correspond to much fewer images per class than in standard benchmarks. This is observed on all benchmarks for different total number of images across different architectures. We observe that the more images the dataset contains, the more classes it should contain while keeping less than 100 images per class. There are two possible explanations for the improvement provided by the increased number of classes previously observed. It can be that images sampled from more classes cover better the space of natural images, as it can be that learning a classifier with more classes is itself beneficial to having better features. To verify these hypotheses, we consider fixed datasets and relabel images in each class by either splitting them into subclasses or grouping classes into metaclasses. Doing that, we observe a strong dependency on the number of classes and labeling. In this figure, we consider 3 dataset setups with the same total number of images and with different number of classes represented by different colors. The x-axis represents the splitting or the grouping ratio. Ratio of 1 represents the original dataset. A ratio of 2 represents splitting each class of the dataset into 2 subclasses, while a ratio of 0.5 represents grouping classes into metaclasses of 2 classes each. The y-axis shows the 5-shot, 5-way accuracy of the test classes. We provide splitting and grouping results for datasets obtained using different features such as oracle features in solid lines, local features in dotted lines, and features of a random network in dashed lines. We observe that the best performance is usually close to that obtained with optimal trade-off of number of classes and images per class previously obtained, confirming the hypothesis of influence of the number of classes rather than the diversity brought by more classes. Our study outlines the crucial importance of the base dataset for future classification. More specifically, we discuss in detail the impact of the base dataset size and its similarity to test classes, the trade-off between the number of classes and images per class, the fact that it is possible to relabel an initial dataset by merging or splitting classes to improve performances, and the impact of class diversity and difficulty. Thank you.